Okay, hello, hello.
Hey, hey.
We are live with Joe, and we're going to talk about it's a new world, it's a new era.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about that. But before we do, I have a little PSA that I want to share with you today. I had a very interesting morning. I got on the wrong bus, and it dropped me off at the wrong stop. But the stop was 1 block away from that little Republican Party headquarters that I keep trying to stop by. And so I said, you know what? This is a perfect chance to go say hi to them today. And they were in, and I got to talk to people. Dude, it was the best experience. They were friendly, they felt normal. They gave me an entire binder of information, pamphlets. I put in an application to become a precinct captain where you go around and you knock on all the doors of the people in your neighborhood.
Oh, would
It
that be paid?
No, it's volunteer, but it's a great way to meet people and build community. And they have meetings all the time. They were talking about the barbecues that they have. I felt like I was in the South. Like if you're isolated or struggling or looking for people to meet or network with that might share your values, check out your local Republican Party headquarters.
Mhm.
It may be what you're looking for. It's very easy to get involved. They love when people show up and just offer to chip in and roll up their sleeves. Hey, Daniel Barry. So I'm very excited about that. I have between the Toastmasters and the Republicans, I'm starting to build some community here locally, and they are so far they're my kind of people. They're not the weird leftist people that I thought that was all over the place up here. So I just want to let people know that's an option for both networking and community building in your local area.
Well, Jeff,
Speaking of
that's a great
Republicans,
story. That's a great
huh,
story. Um, I'll say more in a
that
bit.
was
Yeah.
like half an hour ago. I'm still kind of on a high from being in contact with people. It shows me how isolated and starved I was for that kind of stuff.
hmm
So speaking of Republicans, we have a couple of them in the White House now and in our
hmm
government, and they're doing things.
hmm It was a very interesting inauguration to watch. To hear Trump. I mean, for example, one thing that really caught me off guard was renaming Denali to Mount McKinley. Not something I expected. Uh, I think that had happened under
I
Obama,
didn't even
right?
know they changed it. Was because I grew up knowing it as Mount McKinley.
Yeah. Yeah. That was. Um, I think during the Obama years that happened.
Had no idea that even happened. It's
And
always been
apparently,
Mount McKinley to me.
the like the local Eskimo group that's up there um, had their historical name for it was Denali, and so they changed it to that.
Well,
Uh,
why can't people use both, like whichever name they want?
I don't know. To me, it's not that unusual that the official name would be something different than the indigenous people.
Yeah.
Like Mount Everest isn't named after whatever the local Himalayan people call it. I guess it would be the Nepalese, but whatever. Anyway, that was one thing that was like one thing that just comes up, and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting Manifest Destiny to Mars either. That I knew, of course, Elon wants to go to Mars. I didn't know that Trump was actually going to like throw him that bone. I guess we'll see how far that goes.
Well,
You
we'll
know,
see
we
how far Elon lasts too, because Vivek is already out.
yeah, we'll see. Um,
Mr. B, what do you? I don't even know about the Stargate AI program. Is it like gonna like AI doom us? Are you a AI doomer? Um, I'm reading about it now. Oracle's involved. That doesn't make me feel good.
we got snow over here, Mr. B, in North Carolina. I actually didn't know it was going to snow. I woke up to see powder on the ground, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take my car to the coffee shop this time.
The largest AI infrastructure project in history. But how do we like? What is it even gonna do? Why are you dooming?
The largest AI infrastructure project in history. isn't that kind of a very easy milestone to set right now? Because like up until really just what last year, there were basically no AI infrastructure projects. It's like the first time you hold a race, like whoever wins that race has the world record.
Yeah, that well, that's probably what they're trying to do is set the benchmark as high as they can while they can. Well, I mean, we're the U.S. We have to lead, like, be the best and brightest and lead at everything. We're the superpower.
But yeah, they're estimating by 2030 that 9% of America's electrical consumption will be for data centers that are being built up to run AI. So AI is going to
Until
do a
we
lot of heavy
just
lifting.
create new sources of energy to power them.
Well, so whatever the electrical source is, they're saying the electrical consumption will be that. So it's not worrying about whether it's going to be the current like coal powered plants that most people use, or whether they're going to be hydro. Uh, I think it's going to be a mixture of things. One thing that is being worked on is mini nuclear power plants. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, there's the Manifest Destiny to Mars. Um, there's of course Gulf of America, which I mean some of these things are like things Trump didn't even talk about in his campaign, right? I don't remember hearing about Gulf of America or Manifest Destiny to Mars or Mount McKinley or Greenland. Like Greenland didn't really come up until after he'd already won. The only thing that he did run on was like the whole there's only two genders and we're gonna make that the official position of the government and rescind any of the as part of the DEI rollback. That's essentially what that is. Uh, so there's
What, the
just
Gulf of America thing?
yeah. Was he running on that? I don't remember that being mentioned
No, I
until
don't either. But they were Project 2025 was the distraction because this is all the stuff they were actually planning to do when
I
they
guess
got in
so.
office.
I guess so.
Well, let's I'm still calling it the Gulf of Mexico because I grew up along the Gulf and that's always what it will be called to me. But what let's talk about what everybody's wanting to know about the inauguration. Melania's hat. Do you have any explanation for it? Maybe like a queer eye from a straight guy because I can't figure it out.
It looks like just one of those kind of those socialite hats that you see rich women wear a lot. I mean, it's not too unlike the kind of hats that Queen Elizabeth would wear.
You think so?
Uh,
They have. You couldn't see her
Queen,
face. I couldn't even tell who it was.
Queen
It took me
Elizabeth would
forever to
wear
realize it was
she
Melania.
she would wear a lot of wide brim hats when she'd be out a lot. She was known for that.
Oh,
And it's a thing. It's a certain style that wealthy, socially important women do. Um, and
was it like a
it,
flex?
I mean, I think that you can see like even pictures of, you know, Jackie Kennedy wearing things like that in her day. It's just doing that kind of, they're kind of reality star president and first lady, sort of similar to how the Kennedys were with Camelot and everything. Um, and and of course, there's a Kennedy in the administration, so that kind of
There's a what?
there's a Kennedy in the administration, so that kind of
Oh, right. Uh huh. Yeah.
ties in. But I really think that's all it was. It's uh, just something that she probably thought would be distinctive for a very
Oh, it was
distinctive day.
distinctive. I would say to the point of distraction and
Um, it,
detraction.
I would also notice that, like, Melania is an interesting woman in that, she's very beautiful. If you look at pictures of her around her, the age she was when she met Trump, because she would have like been in her 20s, and Trump would have been in like his like what late 40s or early 50s, and uh, she just looks like a more youthful version of herself. But she has this sort of, how Trump has that resting Trump face where he's like, and Melania does that a lot. I almost wonder if it's like an Eastern European thing where the people there aren't very smiley or cheerful looking, because she's, from that part of Europe. And, I wonder if it's just sort of, again, it kind of supported that look she has, and the kind of, the Trump seemed to go for this very, this resting look that projects toughness rather than composure or relaxation.
So it's the female counterpart of that.
Yeah, I think she's in some ways it's just kind of it was it was a feminine outfit, but it was not like a very soft, delicate type of feminine, right? It's sort of like it's like it's the female version of following her husband's lead with the way he projects himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe. We could be overanalyzing it too.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
Uh,
90% sure of that.
But we
But,
would not be overanalyzing it if she had worn that hat in the first place. So that's my
exactly.
point. Okay, so what else about the new regime that is catching your attention, or the inauguration?
What was interesting is in this, you know, game community I joined last month, there were people talking about it. Some people were just laughing at the memes of it. They're like, oh, yeah, 4 years of stand-up comedy. And the stand-up comedy being what Trump says, not what comedians say about Trump. And
Hmm. I
uh,
think we would have had that with Kamala too. Either way,
yeah, uh,
tragic comedy.
yeah. And um, but there were some folks who were like kind of mad. One thing I noticed that was interesting is like, so people looked at the two genders executive order that he passed, and they were like, oh, it's, it's Trump distracting us and going after helpless trans people to divide us from, focusing on class issues and the bread and butter stuff. And to me, I'm just thinking the people saying that are also in this right now, just by talking about it. Going right for the culture war at the drop of a hat, rather than just focusing on the bread and butter issues. Like they could just not respond to it all and then focus on the what they think are the real issues, the clash issues. But it's just the thing that I've noticed is that, is it where's the distraction? Is it Trump's executive order or any rhetoric he had prior to this point, or was it the folks who were making it an issue in the first place, and therefore people like Trump have had this response to it? It's just an interesting thing I noticed that that's just one thing. There are other things I've seen said about Trump that it's just this lack of self-awareness about how, whatever that people may make of the culture of American politics right now, at the collective and the individual level, coming from critics of Trump, that they don't really see how almost everything they would say about Trump or just the MAGA coalition that is a shortcoming, that they have an equal hand in it, and that, like, for any of it to stop, they would have to be willing to recognize it and reel back a bit, which I think is, of course, not likely to happen.
No, to me it looks just like tribalism. So if they're going to tribalize one over something, one way or the other, the tribalism is not going to stop. This is just the current form that it's taking.
Yeah, whereas I'm like just sort of looking at the comments there, and I avoid making it into a wedge issue that divides people by not responding to that, with them. I don't like, oh, this is my chance to prove them wrong. I just ignore it, and I continue to talk with the people about the funny parts. So that's something that stood out to me as far as the general conversation goes. And of course, it was interesting to see the high profile people who were there, right? Because in addition to Elon, a lot of the tech billionaires like Zuckerberg and Bezos were there. And Elon was someone who was more obviously shifting toward the right in recent years, right? So Elon, a decade ago, you might have thought he was a liberal or a Democrat. Maybe at least around
I
like
think a lot of men in general are.
but
It's getting harder and harder to be an ordinary guy
a
on
lot
the
of tech
left.
leaders, went to Trump. They went to go visit him. They kissed his ring, and they're ready to work with him now. And they were not like the Bidens or the Clintons or the Obamas at that inauguration, where they're, if they're not literally, they are metaphorically gritting their teeth throughout the entire thing. They seem to be, there of their
Oh,
own
I'm
will.
sure they see opportunity. They're
Yeah,
smart businessmen. They see the opportunity in this.
and it's interesting because the Washington Post, which is owned by Bezos, famously, seen as adversarial to the Trump administration during his first term. They had a very bad relationship. The Washington Post, developed that new slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness." And Bezos, of course, loved that slogan because it got people talking about the Post.
But he also they refused to endorse Kamala.
It's true. So it's just interesting, right? Like, in Zuckerberg, of course, with the way Facebook has been run, and he started to clamp down on things like misinformation and engage in censorship in a way that more often than not tended to lean in favor of the Democrats. Here we see him at the inauguration, and then of course recently saying in a podcast that corporate culture needs to become more masculine, which is
What culture?
interesting. Corporate culture. So Zuckerberg is almost
What
becoming
does
like
that
a.
even mean?
Well, I think it's. I did not see the remarks, but if I could just venture a
Let me try
guess,
to find them.
I think it's maybe a sense that business culture in America has become too HR driven, which is where
Yeah, I don't
you know,
understand. So has academia. I don't understand how that
yeah,
happened.
and I think that's sort of like
So has
where
medicine.
where feminine workplace values thrive is in infiltrating HR, um, which is to say the non-operational part of the business.
I had a thought. I've been thinking about that lately. I had a thought um, that on men and women in that. Like the will to power, people, humans, all humans, they get this satisfaction from mastering and overcoming bare nature or things as they are, and like modifying them or putting their stamp on them or
Mm-hmm.
altering them in some way, in a human way. And men like mastery over nature. They like to conquer animals and the wild and natural forces and power and electricity and all that other stuff. And women, I think, get that same will to power from mastery over men, over the people. So you have man mastering nature, and then you have women mastering the masters of nature. And all of this DEI stuff and HR and bureaucracy, it seems like women's attempt to master the masters. Like they get their sense of power from being able to manipulate and control those who are mastering nature, just as men get theirs from mastering nature itself directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious to know, like if you look at who's in charge of HR departments across, say that just the 100 biggest publicly
I could tell
traded
you her
companies.
name. Starts with a K.
But I'd just be curious, like if you were to look at when you look at the C-suite of a corporation, right? There are some usual spots like that you always see, like a chief executive officer, a chief financial officer, chief operating officer. Sometimes there's a chief investment officer, and then one that I've seen here and there would be like it'll be something like a chief human resources officer or something that means a very similar thing. And so my one, uh, um, what I guess I'm wondering is, like, if we were to just look at the 100 largest companies in the country, um, see what percentage of of those who have that kind of role in their C-suite, how many of them are filled by women? It'd be curious to know. And then what percentage of them being women, how does that compare to, let's say, the percentage of women who are CFOs or CEOs or COOs?
The
Um,
data's probably they probably that's probably easy to find.
yeah, I'd probably not be hard.
It was Zuckerberg. This is what he said, that
Yeah,
the corporate world needs more masculine energy, which is a very like female thing to say. The energy and the vibe thing to me
it is a bit.
is.
I mean, it's well, I'll say this: it's a very West Coast thing to say, um, and so it's a very Silicon Valley thing to say. Which you might say there's some overlap between the two for
I mean, I
reasons that
kind of know what he means. I can pretty much
yeah,
tell when someone's talking about masculine energy and female energy. I kind of have a subjective sense of what they're talking about,
yeah,
but
like showing up on time instead of going to HR, maybe just talking to the person directly, be like, hey, I would prefer if you didn't do that. Is that okay? Versus you get an anonymous complaint against HR and suddenly you're called into a room and get a slap on the wrist kind of thing, and then you don't even know what caused it.
a lot of our society has become very neutered or emasculated, he said. Well, I would say feminized. I would go further than that. Masculine energy is good, and obviously society has plenty of that. I'm not sure that that's true, but I think corporate culture was really trying to get away from it I think having a culture that celebrates the aggression a bit more has its own merits that are really
I'll be
positive.
back in a
Yeah, I
moment,
think
Jeff.
it's a move against I think men are associated with violence and aggression. And the least little thing they do, if they move the wrong way, if they talk with their hands, if they sit on the bus the wrong way, it's immediately conflated with violence. Just like everything immediately goes to racism or fascism or Nazism. Like it's hyperbolic associations in people's mind. That window has been moved to where like every single thing a man does is under this heightened scrutiny for violence. And you need some of that competitive like aggression to be competitive. Like that's where the competitive drive comes from. I embrace my aggression. I think humans are violent as a species anyway. So I don't think it. I don't know who's. If you pretend not to be violent, I don't trust you anyway because you're just not even aware or acknowledging your own nature. Anyone in the right circumstances is capable of violence, and that goes for both genders. Okay, he's having technical difficulties, so we'll wait. Let me see if he said anything else about masculine energy. I agree. Um, Washington State definitely needs more masculine energy. That's one thing I noticed when I moved here is just you could feel it in the air, the lack of masculine energy compared to the South. Um, did you hear anything I said? Do you have any comments?
I heard a bit of what you said.
Okay.
Yeah, I think yeah, there's definitely been a shift toward feminization in corporate culture. You know, to the extent that we can call anything masculine or feminine, but um, largely, I think just because more and more businesses wanted to have workplaces that they felt could be friendly to women. That was a thing that became more popular in the 2010s, and really, I think,
What does friendly to women mean? Like what they require a different type of friendliness than men do?
um, yeah, I think so in some
I don't because
cases.
I think I'm a pretty friendly person and I've been friendly with men and women my whole life and I haven't had to do anything different to women that I don't do with men to be friendly.
Well, I think it's like one thing is it's easier to joke with men in some cases than women. There's just I think in
So a
terms of
workplace where nobody joke like the humor like
yeah, it's I mean
I think that's important for building camaraderie.
I've just noticed that in more feminized workplaces, like to the extent that there is humor, it is extremely safe humor. Like I mean,
Like rated G.
like daytime ABC type of humor, and um, it's just stuff that me is like, it's a joke. They're jokes so lame that I would not even dare to
Why do
make them
women
among
need
my
that? Like
friends.
why is that they can't do their job if they don't if they're not if the
Yeah,
humor
I think it's long been debated why it is that men and women have a different approach to humor. I think a lot of people have noticed that men do seem to be funnier than women on average, and maybe it's because men are more willing to dare to make a joke. The essence of a joke is you're sort of there's some sort of surprise element to a joke. You're doing something unexpected, and that requires a little bit of boldness. And testosterone, if we really just want to try and pin it down on something, here's a hypothesis: is that testosterone is associated with more risk-taking behavior, and so to make a joke, you have to be willing to take a risk. You have to take a risk that it will either be offensive or not funny, and it's you can embarrass yourself if your joke is bad. Um, and So I think women tend to do like a lot of really safe jokes that are only lightly funny, but
because
don't
of
have the
that
same
high compliance or
yeah,
agreeableness.
but don't have a high risk of putting their foot in their mouths if it's bad. But then they're just not that funny. It's just
And they're probably more sensitive to social consequences
yeah, and so but the
and the
reward of a
reward.
good joke is great. Like the job I had, I told the funniest jokes. I would get great reactions out of people. I remember one time. So for context, our operations manager on Friday would give us the all clear to roll out. Usually those words because Friday we would leave earlier because usually the phones would die down. So we would usually leave out about 90 minutes earlier rather than work straight to 5. And uh, I joked one time because we were on the second floor of the office building. I said, I'm going to try this rollout thing from the top of the stairs for a change because I was the only one working at the office. This was during COVID. So everyone else is working from home. Right. And then to add to that joke, right? Uh, I took my phone, put the timer on my camera, and I actually took a picture of myself laying down at the base of the stairs as though I had attempted to roll out. I even took my shoe off and laid it on the ground next to me like it flew off as I tumbled. And then I took that picture of me looking like I had fallen and passed out from hitting the ground and put it in the same work chat where I made that I'm going to try the roll out from the top of the stairs thing. Got a huge reaction out of that. And I don't think many chicks would try something like, "Oh, I had a horrible workplace injury" type of joke. You know what I mean? Um, but it got a
Did
great
you get
reaction.
any did people complain about it?
No, 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 no. But
Okay, good.
one thing I do think is that even when you do a joke well and everything is correct, one thing I've noticed over time, it doesn't happen in an instance, but it happens over time, is people seem to notice that they are not funny. And it's sort of a thing where by standing tall, there people feel like they are in your shadow. And that was
I
a
don't
thing
care. Like that's their problem.
it might be their problem, but again, we're talking about the feminization of workplaces and then how they respond to it. Well, they respond to it by going to HR and saying, Joe makes me feel uncomfortable, right? And the discomfort
Yeah,
is
that's that
I'm funny
attempt.
and
Like
they're not. But um, when HR cares just about the optics of things and whether or not you're actually doing anything bad, that has an impact. And so if there is a more masculine energy, it would be something where if someone does go to HR would be like, well, did he actually do anything? It sounds like you just don't like him. Maybe you should not be coming to HR to complain about someone you just don't like. That's not appropriate. Like, I feel like masculine energy would be essentially telling some of these HR plaintiffs, no, it's
I
done.
don't understand why people don't.
Yeah, well,
That's
well, again, maybe Mark Zuckerberg doesn't understand it either, and that's why he said we need more masculine energy. Again, I am I am trying to you know, weave a fabric with the few fibers I have from what Zuckerberg said. But those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking that, like, I think would guys would be more likely to do. Um, and uh, um, it's very possible that I think Zuckerberg is sort of looking back on the 2010s as well and seeing how corporate culture evolved, seeing what Facebook grew into something that was bigger than he ever thought, had social impacts that were bigger than he thought. And one, I think he had some regrets about not expecting that. And then I think after he started to have those regrets, he then has other regrets about how he responded to trying to adjust to that. And I think some of it is that, like, when you look at the need for censorship, it comes from it was like, to the extent that these are corporate entities, they're Silicon Valley corporate entities engaging in the censorship. He says that um, there was a lot of feminine culture that was corrupting it, like that. So much of what was considered racist or bigoted was just based on just really weak
the sensibilities
sensibilities,
of women.
right? Rather than anything that's actually a smoking gun of racism or sexism or transphobia, or then if we're even not even talking about like bigoted beliefs, but like what's considered violence or something, right? Like when you hear things like silence is violence, that's
Yeah,
a group of guys is not going to say shit like that. Maybe some guys who have been henpecked by women will say shit like that, but guys don't think like that.
right.
Um, and so I, I think that's it. Again, generalities. Some of what I'm saying, what I'm working with what Zuckerberg recently said could just be projection. But that's if I'm going to make sense of it, it's like Melania's hat. This is this is how I can analyze it. It's what I've got.
Well, let's get back to Elon and talk about that.
Oh
I've
yeah,
only
the
seen the photo. I didn't see the video. Is
he
that what
did
he did?
something. He did something like my heart goes out to you, and he did like this,
Yeah.
and what his hands kind of going to the side, and it's like he's not holding a salute.
So
Like every time,
people think he's like a Nazi. Like that means he wants to bring back World War II Nazism.
I mean, to me, he's clearly just an autistic guy spurging out from excitement. That's what that is. Like he's a goofball who's being more of a
Yeah, I don't
goofball.
understand the psychology of if he was an actual Nazi going in public and
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is
it's like
like,
the people that saw like the white supremacists. They'd see anybody that did this anytime in a picture, they were a white supremacist, and they were
yeah,
signaling to their white supremacy. And that little Nicholas kid with the native at that high school with the Native American.
yep, that is exactly the thing where he had that nervous smile, and because they got a picture of it, they're like, I remember seeing that the like headlines like this is the fates of white supremacy, and it's just it's a, there's nothing about Elon to suggest he's a Nazi up to this point. Nothing.
Other than their imaginations, because it's so they're so like
Like unless
eaten up with the whatever this narrative is out there that there's these Nazis in the bushes just waiting to pop out at any second.
like if it's a real Nazi
Welcome,
salute,
plasma.
anybody can look at it and say, "Oh, it's a Nazi salute." Like we can do one when we want, and we would know how to make it recognizably a Nazi salute if we wanted to do one, where it would be hard for people to 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 think otherwise. So it's just one of those things where
I remember David Bowie got in trouble back in the day in 1977
I
on one of
remember
his tour. He
I
was in a
remember
car and he was waving and he was doing the White Duke character and he did something that looked like a Nazi salute and it he had to readjust his career from that.
yeah, and what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought for a moment there.
We were talking about that Nicholas kid and
Nicholas
you
Kidd,
could make a
Elon.
Nazi salute if you wanted to that looked very obviously like a
Oh yeah, so
Nazi
oh yeah, I
salute.
remember now. I remember now. I remember now. I remember now. In the same game community, this actually happened in voice chat. A couple folks were like telling me these are folks who believe that it was a Nazi salute. They're like, but historians agreed that it was a Nazi salute, and like this is the kind of thing that I think people don't really appreciate about why Trump won, because when you tell a person who isn't fucking stupid and can see things with their own eyes, we know historians say it was a Nazi salute. I don't care what historians say. I know what one looks like, right? So I don't need a historian to. I have seen like so much footage of salutes, and every time I saw the fucking salutes, they weren't just doing like this brief thing where he's like waving his hand. They were like holding it out, and like it was fixed, and they were looking at people. Like it was a very firm stance,
They had little
and
armbands on.
yeah, it's like it wasn't. There's no subtlety to it. It wasn't like you had to cock your head right or some bullshit like that. And you certainly didn't need historians. Like when the Nazis were doing salutes, you didn't have experts going, you know what, that's an official fascist salute. And, but this is the thing, it's like Democrats do these egg-headed responses to things. It's like, well, experts say this. We have I remember they were analyzing like there was this clip I saw from like CNN or something back in like 2016, and they were like analyzing Trump's presence on stage. Like, we have got a body language expert on today, and the comments are full of people saying body language expert, lol, like that's not even a real job. And like it's shit like this that when you say, well, the experts say, um, it was a Nazi salute. Most people do not need a historian to tell them what is a Nazi salute and what isn't, because you can see it. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and oh fuck, hang on, I lost it. Now it's my turn. What were you talking about just before that?
Um, well, before that, we're talking about the whole corporate culture thing.
Oh no, no, it's something about Elon and the Nazi salute and the left and their
Oh,
propensity to see
to be eggheads.
racists and Nazis everywhere because they
Well,
truly believe that that's what most people are
not just
capable
that,
of.
but specifically to be eggheads about it. To be like, God, how did we lose the working class? And then they just continue with these eggheaded, nose in the book responses to every fucking thing. And then they continue to go, oh, why don't people get us? Why can't ordinary Americans relate to us? I mean, it's amazing how much they just want to dig a hole for themselves. So, it's why I stopped being involved in the party, because it was just clear that I was going to keep circling that drain my whole life if I did. It's one reason at least, right? That reason is enough on its own.
What's the payoff for thinking that Elon is a Nazi? Like, what do they get out of that psycholo Like, that seems like that's a wild thing to think about somebody.
Well, I mean, for some reason, it's just very hard, I think, to be critical of Elon Musk in a way that's proportionate to what his flaws are. Like they have to catastrophize it to being Nazism. So, we could talk a bit about whether or not it's desirable for someone of someone in Elon's position in society to have as much influence as he did on the results of the 2024 election. Right, he just showed up, went to Pennsylvania, and it looks like his influence actually tipped the scales there. And
We don't know. There's no way to know.
I mean,
Like,
we can't.
all anyone could do is tell himself a story about. That's the same thing with
No,
Cambridge Analytica and Russia and all that. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. In
yeah,
fairness, as an enlightened centrist, I have to be fair to both sides. The Republicans were the same way. They still kind of are about some things, but back in the day in the Satanic Panic, they saw Satan everywhere, the devil everywhere. They saw it in the rock music. They saw it if somebody made the wrong little motion or
yeah.
wore the wrong thing. So it's like it's both parties are capable of.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing a lot of it with just how they responded to almost everything Obama said or did. Like Obama would scratch his nose and they would freak out. I was kind of surprised at that.
So I
Um,
think it's like when your guy's not in power, when the enemy is in power, your fear brain, your limbic brain gets activated, and your
mhm.
imagination starts seeing reasons to be scared everywhere.
Yeah, but my point is that uh, Pennsylvania was a swing state. It was seen as the most likely swing state to go with whatever the final result of the election was. Elon showed up there and he used his name and his money to help tilt things. He helped get out the vote among the Amish, and the margin of victory was pretty close. And you can. It's not like we have fingerprints and DNA evidence in the same way like we do with a murder trial and be like, aha, we know 100% this is
Right.
who
That's
killed
why
it.
it's
But we can definitely look at Elon probably having a big influence. I mean, I'd say
maybe.
there's a lot of other things too. Like there's a lot of things that if you take them out, maybe Trump doesn't win. Like Trump appearing on the podcasts was important, and maybe his failure to do so would have meant that he would have lost even with Elon in Pennsylvania. So there's that to consider as well.
I think if you
Um,
analyze the election, you could find factors from Kamala and Trump on both sides and all the people surrounding them. And there's no way to tell. All you can do is weave a narrative. That is as far as you can get is a narrative. There's no way to know. That's true for any election, not even this one. There's no
but
way to know why individual voters, when they're in that booth, are pulling
let,
that
let,
lever.
let's step aside for just a moment, Jeff, and focus not on whether or not we know for a fact that Elon's influence was decisive, but just the idea of it, right? The fact that it can be a thing. Maybe it
Right,
was.
that's what I'm
Maybe it will
saying. Like, but
continue to be.
I think it is very useful and helpful to know when people are operating off of narrative or myth, and when they're operating off of fact. And like pretty like one of the things I try to do on this channel is keep the two very clearly identified, so people know what mode of thinking they're working in at any given time. I think there is value in that. And so you can say whatever people can say whatever they want about Elon or base their reasons for not liking him on whatever, but they are operating on narrative, not on fact. And there's no way to operate on fact in the realm of the political and the
Okay,
psychological and the
we don't
social
have
and the cultural.
100% fact, but the thing is, there's a lot of reason. Like there's no reason to think that you or I affected the way things went in Pennsylvania because we just don't have the resources Elon has. We weren't there. Um,
But is your larger point for even break, like going here is that because of Pennsylvania, there's a narrative that Elon swung the election, and that's why people are all ready to see this negative stuff about him?
no, I would say that is one instance in a very long span of time, over a decade now, I would say, of people worried that tech billionaires are very powerful and influential in American politics. And but Elon did do something a
So
little
that's
bit
the
new.
fear that's at the root of it. What Shelby
Yeah,
is saying is that the billionaires are controlling the government, not the other way
yeah.
around.
But what's very different with Elon is that while that had been an ongoing concern, he took it to new levels by one, showing up in Pennsylvania and actually being involved in the effort to um, determine the outcome of the election. And then two, he's going to be part of the Trump administration, which isn't really something that has happened quite before. It's not like we
But
haven't
none
had
of
business
that's illegal.
leaders.
Like people have the right to do all of that.
No, but I don't think that's the contention either. It's like a lot of things were not illegal in America for a long time, and then people talked about them and they decided,
So
oh, is
should
this
the
good or
speech of
not?
billionaires be restricted then? Is that
Um,
what's up for debate?
I guess it depends on if it's something you think of as speech or not. So I mean, the thing is, like
Well,
we're
whatever he
on.
did in Pennsylvania sounds like he was exercising his right to
It depends on
speech and
what you
advocacy that
think it is.
any of us could have gone. They had that Scott, whatever, that little gay guy that went around also in Pennsylvania and got a lot of votes. And they say Scott Preston, something like that. They said he had a big influence too, and he's just an ordinary citizen. This was at very much at the grassroots level.
Mhm.
So how is what Elon was doing any different than what this Scott guy was doing that he got all this praise for just because he's a billionaire?
Let's get back to my original point here, which is that the criticism that I'm saying could be made. This is just more in proportion of like, look at what he did. What's just a more straightforward? If you don't think well of it, what's a more straightforward way to not think well of Elon? And instead of that, they're going into the, oh, he's a Nazi thing, right? And it's similar to what happened like when people didn't like Obama or just any kind of liberal activity that might have been associated with the Obama era politics. And uh, so people aren't doing that, uh, and then they are justifying it with a lot of these, like, again, these really egg-headed. And I use the word egghead because that was a term coined by Nixon to describe his opponent in the uh, I believe it was the because he ran for president quite a few times. I believe it was, trying to think. I don't remember if it was when he was running for vice president or president, but basically his Democratic counterpart, he basically said, "Well, this guy's an egghead," and kind of sort of criticizing what was, I think, already being observed as the Democratic Party was developing in that time toward this this ivory tower academic that is now, I think, your standard Democrat, and to the point that they can say things that are technically correct, but it only leads them to quibble, to miss the bigger point, to see how like they can't stand up and just look around and see what everyone else is saying, and and in fact, by being technically correct, they kind of just confirm um, how wrong they are to people who care more about like whatever they are the real issues to them. And
Yeah.
so, um, like a good example, like is just sort of like um, when you hear things like when inflation started going up, they started saying, "Oh, well, inflation's good because it means wages go up," right? Technically correct, but again, stupid. It's an egghead remark. Like ordinary people are not going to just say, "Oh, I'm glad the prices of things are higher now," because
Which
ideally,
that's
like
also technically correct. The prices were higher.
they were higher, right? So wages go up so you can afford things more. But the problem, of course, is nobody wants high rates of inflation. You want low rates of inflation, generally speaking.
Let me
Um,
take care of Notlaws here real quick and dispatch his concerns. Notlaws, I'll tell you right now, you're on the wrong channel. It's probably going to get even worse. So if you're hoping to not hear about Elon or his stupid ideas ever again, you might want to reconsider how much time you spend here. And Mike, wow, very what what are your thoughts? I want come up later if if you can and share because to
oh,
me
so he
they're
drove in a
so
cyber
ugly. I don't
truck.
even want to get
Okay,
in one.
I would love to get in one.
Okay, I'm just, you made a statement and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible about the expectations about about this channel. So, That way we won't have to hear you whine and bitch and complain about Elon the whole time because I verbally told you what to expect, and you're still choosing to expose yourself to
I
it.
will say one thing, Jeff, is that unlike other billionaires who might have used their money to influence things, like I know, for example, one pair in particular that used to trouble the Democrats were the Koch brothers because they would just quietly
Yeah, I
fund a
remember
lot
that.
of things, right? And again, you could question how much something like that is good for
And George
democracy. Where,
Soros.
yeah,
But
and that,
isn't that one of the perks of being a billionaire? You get to use your money to influence things. Rich people use their money to influence things all the time. So do people that are not rich. We get
right,
to
and
do
so
that in a
and
capitalistic society.
right, and so some people are essentially wondering, like, at what point does capitalism become the priority of democracy? And I think that's really why people have this knee-jerk reaction to people like Elon. But what's different about Elon is that he is more public facing than the Koch brothers or George Soros have ever been. And he was not only active on Twitter before he acquired it, but then he did buy it, and he's made it into his personal megaphone. On top of just generally having a lot of flamboyant appearances, right? Hitting, before the Cybertruck came out, what, about 4 or 5 years ago? He swung that sledgehammer into the windows. He took a puff of that joint on Joe Rogan. I mean, he just does all this. He's more like a Howard Hughes type of billionaire with the public persona. But Howard Hughes wasn't known for like pulling strings of American society, but Elon is pretty much openly saying that he's trying to do that at this point, and by
Well,
being involved to the extent that he is.
that makes it even easier if he's openly saying, "Hey, I'm trying to pull your strings," for people to not let their strings get pulled.
Yeah, so but those are the kinds of things that I think are causing people to have such a bad reaction to Elon. Some of it's just the fact that it's more public, and then than what other rich people have done. And then there's the second fact of, like, as I think, especially in the aftermath of the 2008 recession, and the fact that I think people in general, liberal and conservative, are still unhappy with how that was handled and the way the economy has been since then. People wonder how much power should billionaires really have in society?
The
Because I think
same
a lot of,
amount of power that the rest of us get.
and I
When
think a lot of
Elon
people,
starts doing something illegal, let me know and then I'll start worrying. But it sounds like people want to restrict his rights and freedoms simply because he's a billionaire. But the rest of us get the constitutional rights from being an American citizen.
Mhm.
It's
So
tall. I'm sensing tall poppyism. I think that's why I'm having the reaction I'm having.
you're sensing what?
Tall poppy, tall
What the
poppyism.
what the fuck is that?
Tall poppy syndrome. You don't know about that? Where
I don't
if the
know.
flower grows too tall, they try to chop it down. It's something that gifted people
Oh,
encounter a lot
oh
in
yeah, yeah, okay.
schools.
That's basically what I was saying about, like, when you stand too tall at work, people
Yeah,
feel like they're in your
that's
shadow.
called tall
Okay,
poppy syndrome, and that's what
okay.
I'm sensing here with like billionaires. Just because you're a billionaire, you're now a target for something that it's really not fair to make you a target for. If you're jealous of Elon's influence or worried about it, then go become a billionaire yourself, and you'll have the same influence.
So yeah, and again, I'm not necessarily going to say whether or not this is good or bad for America, because it's really not for me to determine. But these are the things I imagine are what concern folks.
But but they would be concerned about any billionaire, or only the ones not on their team.
Yeah, probably. Like, I feel like they were less upset about the influence of people like, say, Zuckerberg, when Facebook clearly seemed to be more on the side of the Democrats, right? It's only when he kisses Trump's ring and then he shows up at the inauguration that people are like, oh, he shouldn't have this much power. But the reality is, like, the time to complain about it isn't when he switches over to Trump, but it's like, fundamentally, how much power do you want a billionaire to have, to the point that you think it goes beyond what's just a normal part of being a citizen. Um,
Why are we regulating power? Like
well, I
the
mean, that's
power of individual citizens, like private
well,
citizens. Why?
that's the essence of, like, the way that democracy works, right? It's like, you think about, what are the checks and balances, right? How do you keep any one person from having too much power, right? And to the extent that people are elected into things, right? That is to say, the people who should have power are the people who are elected. And then if people are accumulating
No,
power,
the private citizens should have power. We're sovereign. We're self-governing citizens.
Well, I think people are worried that
So the power
essentially,
is with the people. We
I
already
think
have the power, and I think you should restrict and restrain that as little as possible.
I think what people see among billionaires or businesses is that they're taking on state-like power and not citizen-like power, and I think that's essentially the
What does that
concern they have.
even mean? State-like power comes from actually having state-like power, which is being in the government. Like, I don't even know what they mean when they say they're taking on state-like power.
Well, okay, take a look at Disney World,
Does
for
Elon
example.
have the ability to pass laws
Take
or
a look
to
at Disney.
rule on court cases or to issue executive orders?
So take a look at Disney World. You basically have like an entire county, like a huge area of land that is completely run by Disney, like the corporation. I mean, and they actually have a deal with Florida where they essentially do some like public administration in that area because they run so much of it. And so that's like only in that area do they do that. But like that's an
But that was
example.
done through the political process, and
No, I agree. I
DeSantis
agree.
tried to take it away from him.
I agree. But it's something that they're capable of doing because they have the resources. And that's just like a moment where they have something that is officially recognized. And then you can wonder, well, are there unofficial things where businesses effectively are functioning like states? They have enough ability to influence things that they might as well be the state.
That's not. But see, being able to influence things is not functioning like a state. That states actually have the power to do things. They don't have to influence. They can actually enact and do things. So to say that just because a business can influence, it therefore has power like a state is not accurate. People are worried about influence, and everybody has we have the right to use our speech to influence. We have the right to persuade. We have the right to do all of that as citizens, as business owners, as everything. So people are equating now something that we just have by rights from living in America to now equating that with some kind of state power that we're exercising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems to be what people are doing.
Well, I think that that needs to be made clear that that's what they're doing because none of these people actually have state power. They're doing the same thing with their imaginations that they do when it comes to racism, Nazism, and all that other stuff. They're imagining something in their mind. They're creating a boogeyman that is not actually existing in real life. The scary boogeyman, the scary billionaire that has power equivalent to state power. Even though when you ask where's this power, how are they using it, it's the same kind of power everybody else in this country has. It's not anything like state power, like the power that the state actually has. So it's another ghost story. And I think that identifying that as a ghost story is the thing to do. They're not using their intellect, they're using their imagination. They're not looking at anything factual. They're generating a story from within their own minds, which is more akin to myth. Unless they can show me where these billionaires actually have some kind of state power. It's
I
just
mean,
fear mongering.
I think it ultimately comes to like what people associate with the state. So, and that can vary a bit.
No, it doesn't come to that's part of the problem is it doesn't depend on people's associations. It depends on actual state power. Actual state power is codified in our laws and our documents, so we can point to it and say, "See, this is state power. This is not state power. This is state power. This is not state power." It should not depend on what people's associations about it are. It should depend on what it
So,
actually fucking is in reality.
what you're saying is true in the context of a single state, but then there are different states across the world where some will say this is our power, and some will say this isn't our power, and some will say they have a lot more power than others, and so you can have a general idea of what a state is and what it can do based on
No,
that.
you can go to any government and look at their law and see exactly. It doesn't
Yeah,
even
but
matter what
okay, what the
the
Russian
state
state can
is.
do is way like
Right,
broader
but
than
at
what the
least you
U.S.
can
state can
point
do.
to something in Russia and say this is what their state can do. You don't
Yeah, but
have to
so
imagine or associate to
so folks who look at what wealthy people or big businesses are doing, and if they see this very similar to what states in other countries do, um, with a similar level of influence over the population and control over their lives, that's when people might say, I don't want businesses to have that much power. That's something I can understand the thought process for that.
But it has to be the power from the state they're operating in. Like if Elon if Elon has some kind of influence that he's using that would be considered state power in Russia, that doesn't apply to him doing it here in the United States.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean people would like it if he does it here. So people might then
Well,
to talk
I'm
about it.
interested in separating out reality from and
Like
fact from
even if it's
mythology
not
and narrative and storytelling.
e-
That's
e-
what I've been trying to do on this channel for almost 2 years.
even
I
if
got
something's
very
not
passionate about this.
yeah, even if something's not technically state power, people still might not like people having that much power, and because they might be afraid they'll still
But
abuse it.
it's their subjective sense of an imaginary power. That's the point I'm trying to make. People, they're not operating off of anything factual. They're operating off of their imaginations. And people are going to do that. I just want to make it clear when that is what they're doing and not let them pretend like they're operating off of fact when they do it. Just be open about, yes, I'm using this is all in my imagination. It's not actually based on any realistic fact. So I think you're right. I think people have a subjective sense of the power of billionaires, but that doesn't mean that they're operating from reality. And I think there's a value in intelligent people trying to base their actions and assumptions and belief as closely as possible on some kind of correspondent shared reality. I think that's part of how we got in the DEI mess in the first place, because their
Mhm.
imaginations ran away with them. So I'm not going to let their imaginations run away with them when it comes to billionaires any more than I am when it comes to racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, or anything else. Like I'm
On
being
the
very consistent in my principles and values in how I'm framing my arguments here.
on the DEI note, I think that might also, to some extent, might explain why some of these tech leaders, these tech billionaires, came out and decided that they're going to work with Trump and were, showed up at the inauguration as essentially partners and supporters rather than adversaries. And I think, and if especially if you pair it with Zuckerberg's recent remarks about needing more masculine energy in corporations, I do think there's a feeling that they probably thought DEI is the right way to go. They looked at the results of the election. They looked at how it apparently seemed to just put Trump back into the White House, and then they thought, clearly it's not as obvious as that because if DEI were obviously good, we've had about a decade now for the public to look at it and agree, and clearly a lot of them don't. At least half don't. And then of course you got to figure there are a lot who probably still don't like it, but quietly, vote for the DEI side anyway. And so I think they're sort of realizing, this might not be the way to go. And to some extent, while you can look at them kissing, the rings on Trump's hand as business opportunity, it might also might be a component of it as well that is genuine course correcting, which was DEI was a mistake. We shouldn't have tried to implement it in our companies. We shouldn't have pushed it on people. And it's a big reason why all the chaos of the Trump era, if we want to say that this is an era ever since he went down that escalator in 2015, was in large part caused by us all doing this thing at the same time in workplaces across the country, um, and putting this in people's minds. So, uh, okay, I'm looking at what Jeremy
Yeah,
said.
it- I don't know why it wasn't obvious to them to begin with, but yeah, if that's what's happening, I'll take it. I'm
Well,
happy about that.
I guess they had to realize it at some point.
No, they haven't, not laws. We're still in control of our systems. Um, you talk if you talking about me, what fact is my conclusion disregarding? My whole project here is trying to anchor it into some kind of fact and separate it from narrative or just like Joe said, associations. I want to open up the panel and let other people come up and contribute, but this is what we're going to do on the days that Joe is on, Wednesdays and Saturdays. If you come up, we want to keep this topic open for a while. So Make sure that you have something to say about this actual topic. And then after Joe leaves, we're going to switch it to a more open panel. So it's kind of a semi open panel right now, meaning anyone can come up, but try to have something to contribute to this actual topic.
Okay, we'll see who comes on. Helena Blavatsky
I
says
don't know what
capitalism
the
is awesome.
alternative, like, I don't know what alternative people would prefer other than some fantasy alternative that would never work with Homo sapiens because they don't understand human nature.
I
All
would say
right, there's
capitalism
the
done right
link.
is not awesome. Hold on. Let me return a call real quick.
Okay. I'll is it a date? Hopefully it's a date. Um, I, it, I'm thinking it could be because he was so eager to get it returned. If it was a call that he thought could wait, he might have done so. So, uh-oh. Let me put him on mute. All right, so yeah, if anybody has anything else to say on this topic or any of the topics we talked about, basically the last 3 days in general, um, the inauguration, Trump, politics, what to expect, the actions he's taken so far, your opinion on billionaires and their influence, which, as far as I can see, that's as far as it's gone yet with any billionaire, is influence. Hey, Kane, welcome. It seems like we have those, more or less, so far. Like, I don't think the country's destabilized. Was it a date?
You're asking
Did,
about my call?
yeah.
No, it was actually my best friend, but he doesn't
Oh,
usually call me first, so that was what was unusual about it.
oh, okay.
Um, Although I seem to be getting along with a couple chicks at my coffee shop, so maybe there will be a date at some point if I'm thinking optimistically.
Are you doing anything that might help others that you could, like, tips you could share of what's working with these ladies?
I'd love to do that, but then I'd be breaking the guideline we just said of sticking to the topic while we have the open panel. So
Well, we're
maybe
just expanding the topic. We don't have to be too OCD about this. I think the
definitely.
point was to just not let the conversation get derailed and go all over the place to the point where you couldn't have anything to usefully say anymore.
Yeah, folks, don't bring your schizo rants onto the panel, okay? But um, what was I saying? I was saying, hey, Kane, trying to look at. I was responding. Oh yeah, Helena said capitalism is awesome, and I said capitalism done well, and it's not awesome. Um, because done well, it's actually quite boring, and you just slowly do better over time. There's not a lot of awe in it.
I don't know that that undermines its awesomeness, though. It allows people the opportunity to get rewarded for their efforts, and it brings stability to societies. I think that's awesome. Like, it allows you to actualize your full potential better than any other system we've come up with so far. And
Probably,
look at
yeah.
all the shit it's given us that, like,
I mean,
that modern society has.
feudalism was not known for helping people maximize their potential, for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't say feudalism is as awesome as capitalism.
yeah, Marxism, of course. If you try to get anything done, people are going to dogpile you. So certainly, you're not going to maximize a lot of potential there. You know,
Capitalism lets the poppies grow, that the poppies can grow as tall as they're able to grow. And I think that human flourishing, human creative potential.
but there are
It's
some
this.
imperfections with it that I don't know that we've will figure out. But um, in terms of, it's kind of hard to think of a new economic system at this point. Um,
How are they relate? How is capitalism and empathy relate? Right, that's what I'm saying. It's the best we've come up with so far. But like all of our technology is the best we've come up with so far. What?
Hmm. I feel like that's one of those things that would make you go, "Oh, that's just more vibes and stuff."
Empathy?
Hmm.
I just don't. I mean, I know plenty of empathetic people that participate in capitalism. I don't. I'm not making the connection between the two,
Hmm.
unless she means how like a lot of people that rise to the top of capitalism end up being sociopaths or narcissists because they have the personality traits that allow them to be successful
Yeah.
in those contexts.
Well, they're not as emotionally deterred from making decisions that will, potentially hurt people's lives, but will ultimately hurt
But
the
I don't
mental
know.
health.
There's no system that's gonna like you're always gonna have sociopaths and
Oh yeah,
narcissists because that's part of human nature. There's no system that's gonna eliminate those types
I
from our
mean,
species.
part of the challenge of life is the willingness to make really emotionally difficult decisions. It's like choosing to discipline your child, right? Like no one wants to be mean to their kid, but if they're misbehaving, you have to show them that there are consequences when you do bad things, or your child is gonna.
Or let them
Um,
find out on their own.
you can do that, but uh, if they find out, for example, that bears can maul you on their own, that might not end well. But or like like tell you not to play on something. Like my father would like climb the shed um, just outside of their house when he was a kid, and then jump off pretending he was a paratrooper. Uh, his father didn't want him to do that because he didn't want him to get hurt. Right? If he does it wrong, he's horribly injured, and they're poor people. It's not a whole lot they can do for him then. um, so when he got caught, he chased my father around the house 3 times till he caught him. And you know what happened next.
Wait, what? Wait, say that again.
So my grandfather chased my father around the house 3 times after he caught him being on top of the shed when he wasn't supposed to be. And the reason why he didn't want him on the shed jumping off it because he could get hurt, right? If he finds
Right.
out on his own why he shouldn't do that, he's already hurt, perhaps horribly, and they are poor people. It's not like they can just afford a lot of medical treatments if it's a really bad injury. So uh, that's why. And so when he saw that he was doing, he chased him around the house 3 times, and then he caught him.
Oh, like to keep him from doing it in the future.
Yeah.
What happened to him when he
Zaruichi.
got caught?
Well, so my my father told me he wore shorts to school next day. His friends saw the bruises on his legs, and they said, "Man, your dad is tough."
That sounds like abuse.
Yeah. So he said that was one of the few times he ever got spanked, though. So this was not a regular thing. But
Okay.
when he did get it, yeah, you could see it. Definitely would not be as accept if kid went to school with bruises today. Definitely be a different reaction.
Oh, right. That's back when you could beat your kid.
Yeah, my dad was born in 51, so it would have been like the early 60s, I think, that this happened.
Yeah. Even when I was in school, teachers could paddle the kid. They had paddles and
Yeah, there's
yardsticks and big sticks they could spank
there was
with, whip
there was a
with.
little bit of that. The principal, I think, could paddle a bad kid in my elementary school.
I got hit with a yardstick by my sixth grade teacher, where she makes you stick your hand out and she pops you on your hand with the yardstick in front of the class. That hurt.
Uh-oh.
That hurt more than the paddle.
Did that teach you, or did it make you more of a rebel?
No, I don't even remember what I got in trouble for. I have no idea. I just remember because she was my favorite teacher. So the hardest part for me was that I had let her down. I had done something that disappointed her so much that she felt the need to hit me with a yardstick. And
Hmm.
that crushed me more than the actual physical pain. But it stung. Like getting hit on your hand hurts. And she made you go up in front of the class and stand in front of the board, and she'd have you stick your hand out, and she'd hit you. And I don't even remember why she had me do all that. No, they didn't, Zed. Yeah, the only time I was paddled was in like second grade by the principal, and it was the kind with the holes in it, because supposedly it makes it hurt more. Oh, I've heard about those nuns. I've had friends that were schooled by nuns. They sound scary. They sound worse than the Karens.
Yeah, when I hear about those tough nuns in Catholic schools, I wonder like how much of them were just letting out like this repressed, violent energy that being a nun normally did not allow them to have.
I wonder, yeah. They the nuns are G's. What's a G?
Gangsters.
Oh, gangsta nuns.
Mm-hmm. Been spending most of their lives living in a Catholic paradise. But yeah, on that note, I read an interesting story. It was the personal account of an English woman named Maria Martin, who in like the early 1800s, like the first few years of the 1800s, was captured uh, by Algerians after the ship she was riding was shipwrecked on the coast there, and um, what's she saying? My son had schizoaffective disorder and was institutionalized for over a decade. Where you called me schizo earlier, you didn't answer. I didn't
Uh,
call anybody schizo earlier.
no, you said don't come up here with your schizo rants. That's what she's talking about.
Oh,
He
well, but
was
that's
just
just
being figurative,
that's just a term people use for people who come in like and just start going
kind
off
of like
about the
spurt.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just internet talk. Like there's a thing called schizo posting. I'm not talking about anybody's individual schizoaffective disorder. Although sometimes maybe those things happen because that person has it. But in any event, it's tough to continue a panel when something goes in a direction that is like that. Um, but what was I saying about the? Oh yeah, so she was in prison. She was a slave in North Africa for like 6 years, and talked about basically she published a newspaper story about her experience, and um, one thing she noted is that because this was in an Islamic society. This is why they were captured and enslaved, because since they were not Muslim, it was considered okay to make them into slaves. Um, and they had, of course, rules for the way things work. They still, just as they did among their own people, would segregate among the genders. They had rules for how the slaves were to be managed, and so they had women in charge of the female slaves. And she noted that, like, the woman she encountered who was in charge of the female slaves was like especially cruel and just seemed to get this sick pleasure out of tormenting the slaves, like the other women who were slaves. Um, like just in a way that was particular to her, and that uh, you know, just didn't seem normal for a woman, right? So then you might wonder, maybe this woman had something repressed about her, and there was some sort of violent repression she was taking out on the slaves.
Anybody
Um,
can be a sadist. Is
mhm.
there this impression that women are not as capable of being sadistic as men?
um, well, I do feel like when it happens, you wonder if there's more of a cause for it beyond just they happen to be sadists.
So for a man, it's like, oh, he's just a sadist, and a woman, it's like, why is she a sadist?
Well, isn't sadism more common among men? Maybe I'm wrong about that,
I,
but
I, I don't know. I actually being in the kink community, just subjectively, I don't even notice a difference in the gender. There's it's sadomasochism because it's kind of one
mhm.
continuum, but there's men and women equally. It's a personality type or orientation, I guess. And I haven't noticed a big difference in the genders. It seems like there's like men and women show up to these things equally. In
Yeah,
fact, lately I'd say there might be slightly more women because everything got so feminized, and women now feel like they're empowered and can like they use it for community. Let me see if I can find the gender rates. So no, I don't associate it with any particular gender. I just think it's a human quality.
Kanye says she feels like women are more sadistic.
I know like a lot of the sadists, most of the sadists I encountered growing up were female. Okay, let's
Shel-
see.
Shelby said, "I've met more sadistic females lying up in helping professions than men." I don't I can't tell what that means. Could you explain for me a bit better, Shelby?
Okay, let's see. I found. Okay,
Because you're trying
this
to
is
type
one
lying
study
up.
from 1953. It said 3 to 12% of women and 10 to 20% of men reported experienced sexual arousal in response to sadomasochistic narratives.
Hmm.
This other study from 1985 found that 50% of men versus roughly 33% of women reported sexual fantasy of tying up a partner. That's bondage. That's not necessarily related to sadomasochism. That's a completely separate axis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still searching.
Jeff would know. Jeff is the expert.
Not. I'm having to look it up on Google. And
Jeff taught classes on it in his punk days.
no, but I did do a support group on it, a BDSM trauma support group. Um, so I have a lot of anecdotal and lived experience to draw on, but not scholarly.
Ah,
They didn't have that as a college topic when I was coming up. They probably do now. You could probably get a PhD in it.
well, Kanye, maybe this. If you really think women are more sadistic, maybe this almost gets to why um, Zuckerberg thinks that corporate culture needs more masculine energy because maybe he thinks corporate culture um, has a lot of. If we're talking about feminine energy going in a bad direction, leads like people go after each other as their goal at work versus being productive. It's possible. One thing I will note is that when I remember my job at the law firm, um, I would say the legal assistants who had the most drive, the most eagerness to succeed, to like just take the next call, max out sales, make money for the company, were the dudes. Like just and we had some competent chicks there, but they just their minds went in very different directions with it. But the dudes were like, I really want to perfect the art. Um, take as many calls as I can without giving up quality. Um, Real go getters.
Is that conscientiousness?
Maybe. I mean, there was sort of like a desire to like succeed, to triumph, coming from it. Like I remember this one guy in particular. He was great to train. I wish every employee could have been like him. Like he was like, I'd show him like maybe how a call was handled poorly. He's like, all right, Joe, I'm gonna do it next time. I'm gonna do it right. And I'm gonna keep doing it right. It's like he wanted to conquer the world by taking calls at the office. He was great. And I just did not get that attitude from any of the chicks, even some of the ones that I thought were better at the job. It's just I feel like it was just more often for them. They just wanted to be, sit cozy in their chair with their hot beverage while taking easy calls.
Oh, speaking of hot beverage, I need to go grab another one. I did
Yeah.
find a little bit more statistics. This is from 2016. They found that men indicated. Wait, let's see. Men, men's fantasies were more likely to include portrayals of themselves as dominant, and women were more likely to fantasize about submission. However, regardless of sex, arousal to masochism and sadism were strongly related. Men, um, men were at 19% and women at 10%. That's for sadism. For masochism, women reported arousal around 17% and men at 15%. So it's not that
Hmm.
unbalanced. Um, 64.6 of women reported fantasizing about being dominated significantly more than men, which were only 53.5%. While men, 59.6% reported fantasizing about dominating someone significantly more than women, which was 46 to 70. So it looks like with domination and submission, that's where the biggest difference is, more than sadism and masochism itself.
That reminds me of a thing I've heard quite a bit is about a lot of women, and we can even just say married women, um, to simplify it a bit, will report that they, secretly want their husbands to ravish them. I even listened to a podcast once in which two women talked about this. One of them was like she was like a counselor or a therapist with like a focus on this kind of thing, and talking about why women feel that way, um, and how common it in fact is, and how like why a lot of women don't speak up about it more, um, because um, a lot of it comes to, as they put it, I thought it was interesting, is that women are stuck in their own anxious thoughts a lot, and if the man just takes control of the sexual experience, then they don't have to think about whether or not it's going well. And in fact, the relief of responsibility, um, in this case, the responsibility of making the sex good in itself is pleasurable to them, just lifting that weight off their shoulders. So there's that part of it. Some of it is, maybe depending on their upbringing, they have a lot of reservations about sex, even after marriage. They feel certain levels of moral guilt with it, So you can maybe imagine this being more common among, people with a religious upbringing, or just people who are kind of prudish. And so if they are taken by their husbands versus it's a 50-50 thing, they don't have this sense of guilt that they put on themselves from it. A lot of it also, they see it as a sign that their husband desires them. They want to be desired by their husbands. And so if their husband, who, assuming like they've married him, they've made him a husband, right? It's the end of Beauty and the Beast, right? It goes from being an animal to being a gentleman, right? But if he still desires them so much that the animal comes out a bit, right? They want that as sort of an affirmation of their value. So there's a few other things. And of course, they feel like if they were to talk about that openly with other people, that someone would think they're kind of deviant or freak, or there's something wrong with them, and they're like, "Oh, you're enabling rape culture," kind of thing. So
No,
there's
it's
other
as
stuff like
normal
that.
as homosexuality is.
Well, that was the point of the talk,
It's a
is that
natural
like,
variation of its sexuality.
but it's a thing that like, I don't think nearly as many men would be hesitant to say they want to ravish their wives as women would be to say, "I want to be ravished by
But they
my
would,
husband."
they might be to say that they want to be ravished by their wives.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't think there are as many men who want to be ravished by their wives. I don't think that's actually a thing. Like when you
Well, yeah,
compare,
that study just said it was like 40 something percent compared
and
to
I
women.
and then I think if men aren't ravished by their wives, I don't think they'd be unhappy with their sex lives. But there are women. I think it was more in the sense of there are women who are unhappy with their sex lives specifically because they're not being ravished. And I think that's a different measure than just, would you
Well,
like
we don't
this
know
or
that
not?
men are going to talk about that, but you talking about, are you talking about dominance and submission? That's what you mean by ravish? Which one takes charge or takes control?
Yeah, kind of like,
Because there are submissive men. There's a high rate,
there are
but that
submissive men.
like if you're a submissive male, you're probably least likely to talk about that than women who fantasize about being ravished. So I'm saying there's probably more men out there than you think that do want the wife to take control, or like femdom or something like that. But they're probably self-reporting the least because of the
Maybe,
ideals
maybe
around
the women,
masculinity.
maybe the women in chat can chime in. Um,
Oh, Zach, go ahead. No,
it's
you
it's funny
didn't.
that how this is somewhat related to the whole
I
masculine
know we were
energy
trying
thing.
to model staying on topic, and I'm not sure how good of a job we did.
Well, again, we're not going into some sort of rant. I think we are sort of just plucking at some interesting threads of thought here, but
Oh yeah,
but
I'm
some of
not
it
gonna
pertains
stop it.
to the, again, like what Zuckerberg was saying about masculine energy in corporate environments. It's like the guys were taking control of the sales process, right? They were grabbing the bull by the horns. They were eager to do that. And I just didn't see that as much among the female legal assistants, even though that
I
they
love it when
started out the same way.
anybody that knows what they're doing takes control and leads.
Oh, I certainly
I
do.
want the most competent people leading. I don't even care what gender they are. So,
But it's like for them getting um taking more calls and getting more sales was like scoring more points in a game of basketball. It was just being great at the game, and that was just is a completely different perspective and attitude than what the female legal assistants had. Um,
but you're not sure what was going like what was in their heads about it.
Obviously, I can't know because they weren't as explicit. And again, we're just focusing on um, certain legal assistants who just only seem to be men that had that attitude, right? And so when people are sitting quietly to themselves, I can't really determine a whole lot beyond some very small hints.
Right.
Um, and but based on what I was able to gather, I think it was much more common among the female legal assistants. So that's just what they wanted to be able to sit cozy in their desks throughout the day and just have an easy time at work and not feel stressed. And challenges were not, I think, something that a lot of them wanted to do unless they happened to be in the mood for it that day. Whereas like the high rollers, who were again all guys, looked at every day as an opportunity to be challenged and to to bear a burden and successfully roll it to the top of the hill kind of thing.
So you think women like to be challenged, like least like to be challenged?
Well, um, maybe, and maybe the idea of men being the ones who ravish their partners is some sort of related to the, like, it's just another game to get good at kind of thing. Who knows?
Because
See,
men do they do like adventure and risk and challenge,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering if I know my experience with women, most of them don't. I'm a challenger, and most of them don't like being challenged. But then I meet a lot of men that don't like being challenged either. Hey, Busker.
hey, I was just thinking, do you mean like ravished as in uh, like, like instigating the sex ritual?
Well, I don't just mean that, but I mean like they want a man to, like, basically the wives want their husbands without telling them, of course, just to be so overcome by passion and desire that they just take their wives and very aggressively, but without injuring them.
Yeah,
In a way, like if you were just glancing, like if someone just glanced, they might have a hard time differentiating it from rape. Is essentially, and this is again part of the shame that these wives discuss with therapists, and that was the topic of this podcast to which I listened.
I guess
Um,
it
What was the
depends on the
podcast? Is it on
partner, I
I
YouTube?
guess.
I don't remember. I
Oh.
it was a while ago. So Kane, let's go with Kane. She's a woman. She knows. I'm sure this has even happened to her, and so she might know. Kane, please elucidate if you wish.
Hello.
Hey, Ricky. Do
Yo,
you
what's
ravish your
poppin'?
wife? Ravish your wife?
Oh, I ravished my wife. All right, about
Oh,
12:30 this afternoon.
Yeah,
oh.
She had the day off, so I got some afternoon nookie.
Oh.
dude.
Okay, I'm
You're
almost scared to go get my hot beverage now. Welcome. Oh,
Why?
that's pretty
Why?
cool.
Would you go get a fucking blowjob or something? Or
yeah.
a fucking
Oh no, I was
cum
at I
shot
was
or
hanging out with
what?
the Republicans,
Uh,
talking to the Republican women.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say
Holy
about
fuck!
that, Jeff.
I
I was
made a
gonna say.
comment yesterday about how Trump has made two genders, and holy fuck, man, Obama went off the
Well,
deep end.
he didn't, all he did was codify
What's it's like a
something
like
for
fucking
purposes of the
like
U.S., but he didn't
Well,
stating
I
create
mean, I
genders.
understand what he did, but he got rid of all the fucking. Essentially, there's no more fucking men gonna be able to try to join a women's swim team.
good.
None of that bullshit's
That's
gonna
good,
happen.
man. I hope that ensues.
What were you gonna say, Joe, about the?
About I even wanted to say this when you first brought it up, but I thought it was interesting how that story played out in that you got to meet you said it was local Republican Party, right?
Yeah, it was their
Yeah,
headquarters.
okay. But the way you came upon it was interesting because you got on the wrong bus. It took you to the wrong place, and I thought,
And she let me off at the wrong stop.
yeah. And
Shit.
so, but it happened to be there. I thought the way you handled it was actually an interesting example of living in accord with nature, which is that you looked at it as sort of an opportunity to say, well, since I'm here, I might as well do this, and I at least get to do this now. Whereas, like, I could imagine some people be like very upset about it. They'd be like, "God damn it, I can't
Well, I
believe this
was a
happened."
little bit, but it was a turning lemons into lemonade thing because I was on my way to the store. I was going to get groceries for the next few days because I was closer to the supermarket. And I accidentally got on the wrong bus and it took me away from the store. So I was already frustrated at that. I'm like, God damn, this made my walk even longer. I was trying to shorten it. And then when I pulled the little stop sign to get off, she didn't even notice and she kept driving. And so she
Well, it's
went
not
like,
even necessarily that, right? Because I know here, if it's not quote unquote a safe area to let a pedestrian off, they won't do
oh
it.
no, she was just ditzy. She told me, she apologized.
Oh,
And she wasn't stopping at any of the stops, so I went up to the front of the bus and I'm like, "How do I get off of the bus?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Here, I'll let you down right here." So she was not paying attention to the signals the whole time.
Yeah,
And so
it's a
it
little.
took me even further out of my way. And by that point, I was even twice as far from the store as when I started.
Damn.
And I said, all right, let me use this opportunity to reorient. What can I do that's in this area since I'm here? And then I remembered, oh, yeah, that Republican place is right down the road. Let me just take this opportunity to go stop by them like I've been wanting to do. Look, take the political challenge. I'm going to do this on stream tomorrow. It's some kind of political test, and they tell you what percent Democrat and what percent Republican you are. This will be nice for a centrist to do. They got all
Yeah, give
kind
us
of
a
cool stuff
call.
in here. So yeah, that's what happened. I got over my frustration for taking myself out of my original plan, and I figured out how can I like reorient constructively and use it to some good purpose. And it turned out to be perfect because they were there, um, very friendly, very cool people, and I that might not have happened today at all.
well.
Serendipity. And hey, Robert Escobar. All right, I'm gonna go grab my hot beverage, and I will be right back. So continue to talk among yourselves.
Cheers, brother. So how y'all's doing?
I'm doing
Doing
okay.
good.
Oh crap! Something just opened automatically on my laptop. What the hell is this?
It's the new TikTok.
Yeah, no. I think it was. I don't know why it just like opened itself, but it was like your taskbar opens up like if you have the mouse pointer over it, it'll show like your temperature, your yada yada yada, news, this and that, and it just did that on its own. I don't know how that happened. Weird.
Computers are weird.
Yeah, this one
They're only gonna
especially.
get weirder.
This thing's a dildo, dude. It sounds like a
We
fucking
we got
vibrator.
Stargate coming.
Stargate. Well, we're never getting to Mars, man. I can tell you that.
I think we will. I
Not
think
in our
like maybe
lifetime.
not our grandchildren, but at some point.
Yeah, it'll be maybe in the very far future. We still haven't gone back to the moon.
What'd they say? It would take what? It takes what? 18 months to go to Mars, right?
That's a cool effect with that. Is that a lighter or a match?
It's hemp wick. It burns at 700 some degrees, so it doesn't burn up my herb real quick. Like a lighter, like it burns it out. So like this thing's a pain in the butt, but like and it doesn't smell bad. It's nice. It smells like a fucking candle.
Oh, lenticular halos. Well, does anyone have any thoughts on Trump's first few days in office?
Well, out of all the executive orders, was there any one that you really thought was kind of like, was there any of them that you really kind of like, what the fuck?
No, they all seem typical Trump, typical MAGA.
The only one that the only one I didn't, I was kind of like, what the fuck? I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't have withdrew from the World Health Organization. I don't know. I don't know if that was necessarily a good move, but
I think it was.
What is that?
My opinion.
What practical effect does that have? Was our
Well,
participation
they
just
want to try
symbolic?
and tell everybody that they have to vaccinate themselves. They tried to bust everybody's balls over the whole pandemic, and I think that's why he's separating himself from them.
I mean, that is.
You there, Ricky?
I think he cut out. What benefit do we get from being it? What are we giving up by not being in it?
Well, like subversion and telling us what to do. I mean,
But
because
like on
that's
a practical
basically what they did. They
level, let's
they
see.
they were on like they're only one facet of what made
He
that happen.
cited the organization's mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic as one
Yeah,
of the reasons that he's pulling
that's
out.
that should be a fucking number one reason. It's not. It's got to be reformed. That's my opinion. That's just my opinion.
It looks like that the impact is going to be more to the WHO than to us. But they're saying China might step up and fill the void.
Oh
It's going to
God,
give China more influence.
no, we don't need China calling the shots. That wouldn't be good. But that's just like a globalist faction. The WEF, the WHO, they're all fucking globalist factions.
All
They
right,
deal
here's
with
an
the whole
article.
globe and they tell everybody what to do. You got to get vaccinated. Yeah.
It can weaken the U.S.'s influence in shaping international health policy. What is I guess health is something that we kind of do have to look at from an international level because viruses and diseases and stuff don't honor boundaries. So
Mhm.
it is kind of a global effort.
I
Well,
mean,
it's
COVID did kind of make that point for you there, Jeff. That yeah, it
But
gets
even
around.
with COVID, like every part of the world did it their own way. The
Hmm.
response wasn't even unified
it was all
globally.
kind of parallel, man, except some people were way more like Australia. They beat the shit out of people for not wearing masks. And that's just like the way it was. And how fucking sick these past 5 years were, how people can't put that together in their minds and they've lived through it.
What's the child support tax deduction? Was that one of his orders?
Hmm.
Let me
Maybe he's thinking that if the illegals get sent out, then child support is more likely to be used just for Americans or something.
It
Let's hope
says no,
so.
Trump did not pass a child support law preventing recipients from claiming. I did see something. Well, I don't want to spread misinformation. I'll just wait. Um, that a woman who receives child support from a man can no longer claim the child on her taxes, but that's false. They did a debunking of it.
And
Oh, like you can't claim the child as a dependent if they're getting child support. Like if the father's paying the child support, then the child is not your dependent because the dad's paying the support. But that's false.
interesting. I guess I understood that different. One thing that did surprise me was the order to get rid of birthright citizenship. I almost certainly expect that to be challenged in the courts.
Yeah, it will be. It's already started.
Yeah,
Get rid of birthrights. That's an executive order.
he signed it.
Yeah,
That was one of the executive orders he signed. I
but
was
it's in the
watching the.
constitution. That's part of, that comes from the Constitution, though, so he can't override it with just an
Yeah,
executive order. It
So
would
wait a
have to
minute,
go
what
through
does that
the.
mean? Birthright citizenship.
If
Is
you're
that,
not from here, but your baby's born here, then your baby is automatically a citizen.
it's trying
And
to stop anchor
he ended
babies.
it specifically for people that
oh,
are here illegally. Like their children should not be citizens if they're not even here legally in the first place.
yeah,
Yeah,
Which seems sensible to me. I don't know what the
yeah,
controversy is.
yeah. That's okay. that's a
You
good.
get rewarded with a child that's a U.S. citizen for being here illegally?
Yeah, man.
If at least it will open the conversation. It will get the conversation going about
Yep.
how exactly do we want to allot citizenship.
Well, I mean, how were they doing it before all these illegals were being let in? Right? It took a long time for get legal citizenship, but as it should probably because they need to be vetted, right? We don't need the Biden Harris thing going on no more. We don't need these people just walking in willy nilly. That ain't no good.
Okay, let me see. What the Constitution
But
has. The
did you
citizenship
notice that
clause.
the one thing I noticed that stuck out is that Trump said we got to get rid of the illegals that are criminals, but or he just said the criminals. He didn't say the whole all of the illegals. And in fact, there's really no way that that's going to happen anyway. So I guess that's why he's saying maybe that's hopefully he will get these illegals out of here with some kind of help. I don't know what kind of help it's going to take, but there's some real bad ones here, real bad apples.
Okay, here's the citizenship clause. It says all persons born are naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So and that's
Yep.
and so if you're born here, you are a citizen.
That seems pretty like a straight reading to me.
And no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizenships of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, including the billionaires.
So an illegal citizen can have a baby here and it's
Yes,
considered
that's what
legal.
he ended. That's what he's trying to override, but he's going to have to get around the constitutionality of it. That's going to be hard to do. I think that one's going to get um,
Well, like the Constitution doesn't seem to understand what's going on right now because
Well, no, that amendment wasn't written based on what's happening now. It was
right, but we're
written
still
right after
bound
the
by it
Civil War.
regardless until it gets
Yeah.
changed. You can only change it through the amendment process,
man,
and it has to be done through Congress and the states. So
I
until
don't.
that happens, that's how it stands.
I'm not all about raping the Constitution at all, but there should probably be some updates, but not stupid ones like the DEI dog shit. Thank God that's gonna be gone. I hope. Yeah.
I wish he could do something about it at the state level.
I feel comfort that that's not going to be a thing now. Hopefully, it won't be a thing anymore. This old
It's still
DEI.
a thing up here
Yeah,
because
in certain
it's
states,
all over the state laws. But
but that's
Christopher Rufo is up here. He's the one that helped get it overturned at the federal level, and he lives here. So I'm sure he has his eye on the what's going on in the state, and is
yeah.
probably
I mean,
gonna.
like you're the west coast of America is like the turd drip of Canada's west coast is like it comes down from British Columbia and all the left
They
wing.
call this American speaking Canada, where I am.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just a few miles from Canada across the water.
Yeah.
And then the
And they
border's just a couple of counties north.
do they just let people in, or do you have to show some sort of passport or?
Oh no, it's very hard to. Canada had one of the during COVID. It had one of the strictest border crossing
Oh yeah, I bet it
rules.
did. Yeah, because
Shelby, I'm not worried at all. What am I supposed to be worried about by anti? I didn't. I was gay before DEI. I didn't need DEI for any of the progress I made
right.
with my gay rights.
That's right.
So, my gayness is not connected to DEI at all, or
Yep.
threatened by its absence.
That's a good way to look at it, Jeff.
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen if getting rid of DEI policies is necessarily the same as specifically affecting the individuals, especially like in their personal lives. I mean,
Well, like when it comes to, excuse me, bosses doing the DEI routine, that leaves out the person who is most uh, should be most eligible for the job, person with the actual talent to do the job. Not the DEI stuff. The diversity, equity, inclusion opens up the door to, well, they can't hire so many white people. We gotta have a lot of diversity in the, yeah.
Yeah,
So
he said that's no more.
like man, my fucking the surgeons that took that thing out of my face, they it was like the team of diversity, and the one guy who was like this really stupid guy was a white dude. It was like watching a TV show on modern television. Like you had like an Indian, you couldn't barely speak any English, then you had, of course, black people. I didn't see another white person except for that big
The
white
one,
dude.
the white guy was the stupid one.
Yeah,
Maybe he was the diversity hire.
I don't know. He was a part of the team doing my surgery, so I think he was a lower
Need
part of the
one
team.
white guy on the team.
Yeah, and he wasn't doing. I don't think he was a part of the surgery per se, but like maybe the doping me up or whatever. I don't think he really had a part in it because I didn't see him around me as much before or after. Yeah. Um,
Shelby, I don't know that I process hardship differently than anybody else because my hardship is at an individual level. It's being poor, it's how to get an income, finding a job, that kind of stuff. And if anything, I think being white and male would work against me more than being gay, at least up here. But so
yeah,
I don't know how my hardship is connected to needing DEI or not.
you might still process hardship differently, which is to say, you might take things on your chin better than a lot of other people.
But I think that's also individual. It's not
Mhm.
that's not related to DEI. How you handle hardship and adversity is an individual. I look at the things that I have control over, regardless of what the situation is.
Yeah,
How can I get myself out of this situation? How can I advance myself? How can I meet the goals I'm trying to meet for myself,
yeah,
independent of what other people are doing?
and I would agree with that. I think Shelby sort of makes an interesting highlight there, which is when people are not invited, they don't feel welcome. DEI says, please invite, and that's
I don't
that's
care about
effectively.
people's my happiness has never depended on people caring about my feelings. That's part of it. I don't need other people to babysit my feelings. I can do that on my own. And so if there's plenty of places where I don't feel like I fit in or I don't feel welcomed and I just don't go to those places. I find other
And
places to go to where I do feel welcomed.
Jeff, I think you probably also understand pretty well that you cannot make people care about your feelings, and that
No.
any initiative or policy to try to force people to care, which is to say, if you force someone to care about something, you're forcing them to feel something that they don't feel. Like that just is a self-defeating goal on its own. Like you can't force me to like Brussels sprouts as much as I like tacos. Uh, no matter how uh, you know um, socially desirable you make it out to be. I'm just not going to like one as much as the other. And um, I think that sort of essentially gets to what you're saying is like, we know how much people are going to care about our feelings or not.
I
And,
I don't
and
put my feelings at the mercy of other people to begin with. That seems to make you vulnerable and compromise your own power. I don't know why anybody would do that. But I think maybe is or do you see DEI as if you're black and it's a workplace full of white people, how do we make the black people feel comfortable? How do we make the gay people feel comfortable? If somebody's trans, how do we make them feel like they're a part of the team? Like I've never I have never, even before DEI, I have never had that be an issue anywhere I've worked. Like, if somebody knows how to run a good workplace and do proper team building, those issues will solve themselves on their own. You don't need this extra thing called DEI on top of that. That's just people not knowing how to integrate new people into their team.
But yeah, I do think it's interesting is that what I get from DEI is that they need to do stuff to try to actively make certain groups feel welcome in a way that simply being nice to them in a normal way that you're nice to everyone else
Yeah, that's
somehow would not do.
I've said, and this challenge still holds. Give me a classroom and put a DEI trainer next to me in another classroom, and I guarantee I will produce better results than DEI when it comes to integrating diverse people into a workforce, making them feel comfortable, making them feel welcome. Hospitality, I call that hospitality. I will do that better than whatever the DEI training do it, and I will not do it in a DEI way. If that's what DEI is trying to solve, there are so many other ways to do it better than what DEI is proposing.
I mean, I think the essence of the problem too is like, the real caring isn't just stuff you say; it's stuff that you do, and the stuff that you could do isn't something that you could easily implement through a policy. So, for example, I think I may have even brought this up before on a different panel or stream that we did, where in the short run, asking how somebody's weekend is can seem like a nice or considerate thing to ask, right? Indicating that you might care. But over time, if they and so that individual plus other individuals only ever ask you about your weekend, and you end up never really doing much with your weekends because people don't want to plan things with you, right? The long term, it kind of can prove the opposite, which is that I don't care enough about you to actually plan the weekend for you. Therefore, I'm always just in the position of having to ask you how it went, right? And so if you wanted someone to feel welcome, at some point, somebody would actually have to care enough to say, hey, I want to make plans with you. I think you're a fun and interesting person. We should do stuff outside
But
of
you
work
can't like that adults can do that for themselves. We
That's
don't
my
need a
point,
nanny
Jeff.
state
Jeff,
babysitting
listen to me.
everybody's like social relationships.
Before you spurg out, that's my point. That stuff has to happen organically, which is why the
Right.
DEI cannot work, because clearly that stuff doesn't just happen. Or if it does happen, people are doing it because they feel coerced in doing it, and they're just kind of, they're waiting to leave whatever the thing is that's happening.
Maybe that's they're just a shitty person. Maybe they have a sucky personality. Maybe nobody likes them. Nobody wants to be around them. It has nothing to do with their race or their gender or anything.
Yeah, and then some people, maybe the people who are not, beaming affection at this isolated person just themselves aren't very affectionate. They don't like a lot of people, and trying to make them be more affectionate isn't going to help. I mean, it's just it's okay for people to be left out. I say that as a guy who's been left out a lot of things in my life. It's okay. I mean, I don't like it, but it would be strange to me if the levers of society needed to get pulled just so I could go out and do things more often.
And also, I still have to wonder how much your feelings even matter if you're there to do work. If you're working, you don't even have time to be focused on everything that's affecting your feelings every minute of the day. So to me, that's people that have a lot of time to sit around and even notice how they're feeling because there's not enough work to focus on. Because every workplace I've been in, you treat the ideal is to treat each employee equally. That's all. Like you show up, you teach them the job, the people come and do the job, and you don't treat any one employee any different than anybody else. That's basically the workplace ideal that everybody shot for, and every manager or leader has managed to approximate that ideal more or less. So I don't know what this extra, I need to feel a certain way. I need to feel
Yeah.
welcomed. I'm a black person. I need to feel like I have a place working around white people. It's like an extra layer of complication that I don't understand what it has anything to do with the job itself.
Yeah, and again, I myself really only feel moved by gestures that people clearly are doing of their own volition and not because they were goaded or forced into doing it by some sort of institution. So like my my boss, Michelle, from when I worked at Starbucks, who I've talked about multiple times by now. One of the reasons I consider her my best boss is because I think the way that she showed that she cared about me and other employees is in her own way, and it wasn't her trying to follow any kind of rules, but it's just the way she views people. And you could lose her favor if you let her down or disappointed her enough. She would not just magically love everybody. Um, but if you were a good employee, a dependable person, and you had the makings of a good friend, she would see that in you and appreciate that about you. Um, when I noticed that like she would acknowledge things about me in a way that was clearly just not being pulled out of her ass, that made it. I could tell that it was real then, and I think that's ultimately one of the weaknesses of DEI is like there's a lack of uh, sincerity to it. It's these things have to happen on their own, right? It's one reason why
That's
I,
what I was
I
about to say with this change the culture comment. Culture changes organically on its own. That the long lasting change cannot be forced from the top. And what kind of culture do you need other than a culture that lets you perform your job duties? That's the only workplace culture that people need to worry about. And we've had that for decades before DEI came along. Do, Showing up and doing a job has nothing to do about your feelings. All of a sudden, the workplace was about how I feel when I'm at work rather than what job am I here to do. Because the culture that facilitated doing your job already existed. They were wanting a different culture that addressed feelings, and that's not anything to do with traditional workplaces and how they work. So I don't even understand this change in what the concept of workplace culture is, from oriented from the job itself to how the employees feel when they're at work.
yeah, and I think if people like the see hand washing incursion has been shown to improve public health.
But I wouldn't call that culture though, or anything to do with people's feelings. Yeah, hand washing's a good thing. I'm glad people are doing it, and
I
a
was
lot of
fast away.
jobs even require it. But that's not anything to do with feelings or what race somebody is, or changing culture unless there's a culture of hand washing.
I will just say like the to the extent that there were there were like specific policies like these in companies before DEI. It was before people used words like inclusion, they used words like tolerance, which is that you would just allow people to be involved and coexist, and even if you didn't like them, you would put up with them and work with them. But that's very different versus we want to make you feel included, and you're just reaching your arms out and trying to collect people like they're trophies.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
against these kind of laws.
right?
I don't think that's the best way to. Um, First of all, I don't want anyone I want to be determine my behavior. I don't want other people determining what they think my behavior should be. If I'm operating within the parameters of existing law, then my behavior's fine. These are people that want an extra. These are the Karens. They want an extra set of laws outside of the actual laws that people's behavior conforms to. And I'm against all of that. I want people to behave however they want to behave, how they choose to behave, without other people interfering with that. That to me is more of an American ethos than ignorant of what though.
Everybody's ignorant. There's
The
always
only
something we
thing
don't
you need to
know.
be the know is your job, the existing laws and your workplace policies, how to do your job. So there's no behavior that needs to be changed that's not already taken into account under laws or job duties.
Well, Jess, this has been a good talk, but I need to go ahead and get off and return that phone call, and move on with some other things tonight.
Okay, it was thank you for hanging out and we
Yeah.
smoking it. Yeah, but see that was changed through law, not through DEI or anything like that. There were laws that were passed. Same with seatbelts. So that I guess the difference there is it worked its way through the political process, and it which is a legitimate way of enacting change, and it only changed behavior in that one setting. You could still smoke outside of work. You could walk away from work, like get so many feet away from the building, etc. So it didn't limit your ability to smoke. It didn't prohibit your ability to smoke. It just limited where you could do it, and only while you were at the workplace. But I don't see the connection between that and DEI and feelings. Cause like it's you can change if you want to call that behavior, smoking, seat belts, that kind of stuff. You can change that through laws or policy in the case of a workplace. But none of that has anything to do with feelings. How do you change feelings? Like what feelings are you trying to engineer, and how do you engineer a, a certain feeling or emotional outcome through a law? So that's one of my problems with DEI. My main problem is I don't even understand what problem it's trying to. What That's what I don't understand. What workplace can't people already enter without needing all this special policy? Everybody I know could. I've told this story before when I was just out of high school. I tried to get a job at the car wash, and I did not. I applied and I did not get the job. That's back when you had to do the paper applications and everything. And my I had a good friend who was friends with the manager, and she asked him about me. And he told her privately, off the record, that it was because of my sexuality, and he just did not want to take the chance because I needed to be able to fit in with the rest of the guys, and he didn't want it to affect the morale, like the team morale that was developed between the guys that worked there and then introducing somebody like me. So that's an example where a, a superficial demographic quality about me kept me out of a job. But I don't know if that would happen today either. This was like in the early 90s. But we already have and there's no way he could have said this. Okay, first of all, back then, gay was not a protected class, but it is now. So let's say something like that happened today. We already have laws to address that. Um, Now, he was probably smart enough not to say it officially or go on record saying it. This is something he just passed on informally to this friend of mine, and then she passed it on to me. And the first job I got in Seattle, well, actually the second job, um, that job I got fired from, they said I was too creative, passionate, and intense. When I first got hired there, my coworker told me, kind of just privately, that because the manager, when she was making the hiring decision, she had two candidates she had narrowed it down to, and they had an office meeting, and she got the group's input as to which of these two candidates did the office want as their coworker. And she said I was hired because I was a guy. They did not want another female in the office. They wanted a guy to balance out the amount of females that was in there. And so she told me that I was hired, and they told her to go with the guy. And so part of the reason I got the job was because of my gender or my sex, whatever you want to call it. Because I was competing against a bunch of women, and the advantage that set me over the edge in their mind was that I was male, and I would not, at least not be another woman. So even something like that was probably not legal. But that's a case where it worked in my favor instead of against me. Oh no, that was a different lady. And I actually got voted out of that group. It was a committee. It was a volunteer. It was a volunteer. It was on a mental health committee that the county funded and organized, and so there were peer counselors on it. And the lady I was sitting across the table from, one day she started saying something about I talk with my hands and that means that I'm violent. And I said, no, I'm gay and I'm from the South and I talk with my hands. And she said, no, you're violent. Like she totally negated my explanation for why I talk with my hands because it's my body and I know why I'm doing something with my body. And she overrode that and said, no, it's because you're violent. So, like, her interpretation of my behavior was the dominant interpretation that everybody was going with and not my own explanation for my behavior. And then they went around the table and they took a vote and to vote me off of the committee, which they were not allowed to do. It was completely I had the charter, the committee charter with me, and it had a very specific process for removing members. And they were not following that process. They were not allowed to just take a vote and vote. But the president was an idiot. The vice president was an idiot. None of them were listening to me. I had the charter. I said, it says right here in the charter, you cannot do what you're doing right now. They said, we don't care. It really is. Yeah. I was also, there was another training I went to. This was at an actual job as part of the orientation. And in the training, one of the guys was I don't know what the topic was, but he said something like you have to be aware of the effect you have on other people. And he said, as an example, if you're tall and you're male, you have to understand how that can make people around you uncomfortable or it can intimidate. And the minute he said that, I'm thinking, that's bullshit. No, I don't. I don't have to do shit because I'm tall and I'm male. If somebody has a problem with that or they're going to react to my height and my gender, they have the problem. I don't have to be aware of and do shit in relation to that. I should be able to be tall and male and go about my day and not even worry about it. But he was trying to tell us that certain demographics have to take on this extra burden of consciousness and how we appear and come across to other people. And I called bullshit on all of that. Because you wouldn't tell a gay person or a black person, you have to be aware that because you're black, people around you might feel uncomfortable around you, or because you're gay, people around you might be intimidated or feel uncomfortable. But it's perfectly okay to tell someone that's male that people might feel uncomfortable around them and to be aware of that and keep that in mind when you're interacting with them. Let's see. Ooh. Well, here they have the I saw them the other day. They have the social work cops. They were talking to some teenager at the park. They stopped, and they had the cop, and he had his cop vest on, like his flak jacket thing, and they had another one next to him that was dressed almost like a cop, but his vest said social worker on it. It was like a cop vest, but instead of police, it said social worker. And he was talking to the kid, and then the cop was standing next to him. So they have like the social worker cops now that they send out, which I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm willing to let that experiment see how it plays out. I know there was a move in Seattle for a while where about sending peer counselors, like partnering peer counselors with cops or social workers when they would go on mental health cases. So like if somebody calls 911 because they're having a mental health crisis and the cop has to go out to their residence and check on them and try to de-escalate, having a social worker or a peer counselor accompany the cop and help with the mental health de-escalation part. So I would have signed up for something like that. I did, as part of my last job, I did meet with the local precinct, the police station, and we did some work around autism education and helping them become aware of some of the people that they stop, making them aware of mental health symptoms or symptoms of autism or neurodivergence and how to separate that specific behavior from criminal behavior. So that, like, because they look for specific suspicious behavior. And sometimes autistic people can come across weird and suspicious. And so we were going to do a series of workshops or something where we help to educate cops on how to identify which behaviors were actually suspicious and which were just people being spurgs. And it was the precinct actually that got taken over in 2020. The Chaz. Remember they took over that cop station and they ran all the cops out, and then that's how the Chaz was able to come into being. It was that precinct, that police station, and they were so nice, so helpful. They were so cooperative. They were really excited to collaborate. They were very eager to learn about autism. They did not want to be policing mental health or autism people for no reason. Like, I was so impressed and encouraged by their receptivity and their attitude to all this. Like, I had a very high regard for this precinct. Well, part of the problem was that the county had an official representative at the meetings that was supposed to monitor the meetings and make sure that they ran correctly. And the lady had stepped down and they were looking for another person to take that role. And so they didn't really have somebody in the meantime. So it was kind of the inmates got control of the asylum for a little while until they could find a new person to take that role. And so it happened in between, like, when this lady stepped down to when they could find a new person to take the role. But once they found a new person, the committee got disbanded. Like, they ended the entire committee because they weren't running. It was so dysfunctional at that point. I'm not responsible for any. Your feelings are a chemical reaction that are happening inside of your body and inside of your brain. I am not responsible for that any more than I'm responsible for your digestion, your or any other chemical process in your body. So if you as an adult cannot be aware of and manage your chemical processes in your own body and what's going on with your body, then to me you're falling short of the social duty that's required of you as an adult. Not laws. I'm gonna we're probably doing a watch party tonight. We're gonna be watching stuff in Discord, but I might try that game later tonight. I woke up thinking about it. I was gonna play a little bit this morning, but I didn't have the time. I mean, if I could control people's feelings, I would go around making everybody feel great all the time. I would just use my powers and spread my pixie dust around and make everybody always feel good. I don't want anybody to feel bad if they don't have to. I don't have that power. Even if I wanted it, I don't have that power. So if I don't have the power to make you feel good, I don't have the power to make you feel bad either. You have a role in all of that. Okay, here's a video game announcement. I had a friend that was into Final Fantasy, so I would watch him play it a little bit. This was back in the 2000s, the aughts. So I would watch him play it. Um, it was kind of cool. I don't remember much about it. Okay, let's see. All right. I guess that's it for me today. It doesn't look like we're gonna get much of a panel, so I will go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for hanging out. I will be here tomorrow at the usual time, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. Yeah, I think he played it on a PlayStation. I remember it was on some console. Yeah, you too, Shelby. You know I like hanging out with you. um, Tomorrow I'm going to take this political challenge test that was in my little this little booklet I got from the binder. They gave me a binder at the Republican headquarters, and I'm going to see what percent Democrat and what percent Republican I am. And look, they have a whole paper on I am a Republican because and all of their beliefs. So I might go over that. I think what I'll do tomorrow is I'll go over some material in this packet, and we'll see what being a Republican in my county is all about. Yeah, it's supposed to be disability is supposed to be a protected class, and mental health is also considered a disability. And I've been fired from 2 jobs for symptoms related to both autism and PTSD, that like the spurging out and that kind of stuff. And I have filed civil rights complaints both times on both employers, um, claiming mental health and autism discrimination, because those situations should have been addressed appropriately for under the disability category, and they were not. And um, one of them got, it's a long story. It got, I didn't win the first thing, and then I appealed, and I almost won the appeal, but I found out that one of the witnesses was like double. They were telling me one thing, and then they were telling the people on the other side a different thing, so they were like playing both sides. And if they had continued to stick by the stuff they were telling me, I would have won the appeal. But I guess they got pressured into taking the other, like going over to the other side and taking that story. But they were spreading 2 different stories for a while, and it all came out in the testimony. And then the second one went to mediation, and we resolved it through mediation. So that's how that one got resolved. So yes, it is a protected class, and you can file the EEO, Equal Opportunity Employment Organization, or if your town or city has a local civil rights office, you can file through there, or you can get an attorney. So if you're in a workplace and you feel like you're being treated a certain, yeah, EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And if you feel like you're being unfairly treated because of neurodivergence, autism, mental health symptoms, PTSD, bipolar, depression, all of that stuff, um, those are categories that you can file a complaint against. I would personally recommend some soft advocacy before you escalate to a formal complaint. But this is my experience. This is what I would tell people in those situations. If they're not understanding your condition, and if they're pathologizing it or treating it as something that it's not, you're in the wrong work. Like ultimately, long run, it's going to you're not going to be successful there long term. It's not like all of a sudden you can educate them and they'll start seeing you in a different way and say, "Oh, okay, we suddenly value an employee and we want you to work here." None of the stuff is bothering us anymore that was bothering us about these conditions. That's not ever going to happen. So when people start making issues out of things that are part of my meanness, my neurodivergence, or my PTSD, my trauma responses, that's when I start figuring out, okay, I need to find somewhere else to work. I start looking for the exit doors because it takes the amount of education it would take for everybody involved to suddenly be brought up to speed and on the same page about this stuff is unrealistic to expect from a workplace, especially a larger workplace. Sometimes in a smaller workplace, um, when it's just a few employees and you have an understanding supervisor or manager and you can educate that one person and then it can trickle down to the few other employees, it can maybe work. But a large employee, I find in any organization, when you come on the HR radar at all, you're pretty much a target from that point on it from then on at that point. And people really don't understand the invisible disabilities. I worked at a disability agency that didn't even understand them, um, because they're subjective. They take a lot of conceptualization on the part of the person that doesn't have that condition, so it's hard for them to make a mental picture of what's going on with somebody like that. And they're just hard to understand and see. It's really hard to not categorize it into more of a negative box than it needs to be. Because if you understand those conditions and how to work with them, and how to work around them, they don't have to be the big deals that people make about them. And a lot of times it comes out to the two things it comes down to, at least in my cases that or in other people cases that I've seen. It comes down to coworkers feeling uncomfortable. Again, emotions and feelings, feeling uncomfortable. If they would focus on their job, nothing about me should be affecting them at all. It's this ambient vibe stuff. They just don't like the way they feel at work when you're around. And the other thing is supervisors and managers feel challenged. They feel threatened. So it's either a threat to somebody's authority or a challenge that they don't know how to, because they're trying to like get you to conform and get you in the little box or hole that they want you in so that they can manage you. And if you have too much that falls outside the lines that they don't know how to smooth out or anything, then you become a threat or a challenge to the authority figures. But outside of that, the coworkers themselves, it's about them how they feel at work. So if enough people feel uncomfortable at work, or if you're creeping too many people out, then that's another reason you're going to come on people's radar. But if they stay performance focused and skill focused and job competency focused, none of this stuff needs to be an issue. Yeah, exactly. Especially here in Seattle. Because Seattle goes more, right. Yeah, they're emotional massage therapists. Seattle is very obsessed with form, how something appears, more than I'm very obsessed with content. Like, am I doing the job? Is the job getting done? Is it getting done at a high level of quality? Is the customer satisfied? Is the client satisfied? And as long as that's happening, I consider that quality job performance. Here, they're concerned with does it fit into a certain form? Does it meet a certain arbitrary set of standards? Does it follow a certain template? Does it conform to a certain process? How does it appear to an outside observer? So they're less focused on the content of the work than they are on how the work aligns with some kind of platonic ideal that they have codified in policy. So every little thing, like you said, that sticks out catches their attention because they're not focused on the work itself. They're not focused on the content. They're focused on the form that the work takes to an observer, not the content of the work itself. Yeah, and I'm told because we have Microsoft and Amazon here, they're like the two giant, yeah, the aesthetic of it. Because they're the two big mega corporate presences in the state, that whatever Microsoft and Amazon do, all the other corporations and organizations adopt their ethos. And so if and I shared my Amazon application experience, how robot and machine like it was. And so it's very mechanistic and technocratic and process oriented. And so that's how Microsoft and Amazon do things. So all of the other businesses around start to conform to that way of doing things. And if you don't have a Microsoft or an Amazon in your state or in your city that's going to influence how all the other businesses work, then you'll probably feel less of it. But up here in Seattle, because of the presences of those two corporations and that the government itself here is heavily bureaucratic, it's just they have the Seattle process. It's an actual thing. You could Google it. Um, oh yeah, they do. That's Steam. The company that runs Steam, that created Steam, is here also in Bellevue, which is outside of Seattle. So that's another one. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. The more like, plus it's a bunch of tech and geek and autistic nerds here that think like machines anyway. So everything is about how does it fit into the machine? Are you compatible with the machine? More than can you do a good job? Is the quality of your work sufficient? You have to do your work in a certain way for people to see it as legitimate work or to feel comfortable about it as work. They're not just satisfied with results. they're much more concerned with how you got those results. And if you didn't get them in a very precise, specific way, then it starts to invalidate the results themselves. Slope. Well, well, good. I hope it. I hope it helps. So I hope all of my suffering could help somebody. It will all have. It will not have been in vain. Um, all right. I guess I will call it a day. And unless I'm out today playing that video, I mean out later tonight playing that video game, I will plan to see everybody tomorrow at the usual time, and we'll go over some of that stuff in that Republican binder. All right. Oh yeah. Hey. Oh, hang on. Let me update Shelby. Yes, I did. I got a part-time retail job. Um, so I start in about 3 weeks. So farming. Okay. All right. Well, good luck with that. I wish you greatness. Yeah, it's. I mean, like I said, it's just a part-time retail job, but at least it's going to allow me to kind of stabilize and supplement what I'm trying to do with the channel, which has always been my goal. And now it takes some of the pressure off of the business and the channel, and I can take the time to find a different job down the road if I need one. So it solves my immediate problems that I was trying to solve with it, and we'll see what happens from there. Okay. Yep. See you later, Jeremy, and everyone else. Thanks for hanging out. You know I appreciate you, and we'll do it again tomorrow. All right. Hang on. Come here. There we go. Nope. There. All right. Take care.